So, what if we were vegetabilists? Now, you're probably asking yourself, what is a vegetalist? I've never really heard that term before. Well, that's because I made it up. To me, a vegetalist is someone who consumes food from all food groups, but who makes a conscious effort to think about and incorporate vegetables into their lives. So, how did I come up with this term? Well, let's think about other plant-based consumers, vegans and vegetarians. Individuals who focus on a plant-based diet, but also exclude meats and other animal products. So what if some of us just want to eat more vegetables without excluding meats? Well, we could be vegetabilists. And also consider the ist words. An economist, someone who is knowledgeable about the economy. A feminist, someone who advocates on behalf of equal rights for women. And a linguist, someone who knows about foreign languages. All of these individuals are educators, advocates, and experts in their area of expertise. And I think we could be experts about vegetables by becoming a vegetalist. So, did you know that across the world, people are inadequately consuming vegetables? And here in Winnipeg, as well as across Canada, about only 40% of us are consuming the adequate amount of vegetables set out by Health Canada. And I have to admit, I was one of those individuals. When I was a kid, I would not eat vegetables. I would not look at them. I didn't want anything to do with them. We were not friends at all. And if I would have told my parents that I was coming here today to talk about vegetables back then, they would never have believed it in a million years. So, what are vegetables anyways? Well, vegetables are edible plant-based foods, like carrots, peas, and celery. And for the purpose of our conversation today, I'm going to exclude starchy vegetables, like potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn. Now that's because those types of vegetables are actually higher in carbohydrate, and we often categorize them with the grains and the starches. Now, we all know about vegetables. They're nutritious, they have lots of vitamins and fiber. But did you know that vegetables are also lower in energy density? So what does that mean? Well, energy density is the amount of energy or calories per gram of food. Now, lower energy density means that we can consume more food for less calories. Now, wouldn't that be nice? So take a look at this graph here. We can see the energy spent versus the energy taken in. So in the past, we spent a lot more energy. We did things like physical labor, working on a farm, walking places. So we needed to consume more energy. Now today, think of your lifestyle. We are taking vehicles places. We're sitting at our desk all day and we're watching TV. That means that we're not expending as much energy. We're not spending as much energy in the things that we do. So we need to match our low energy lifestyle to our low energy density foods. We need to make them equivalent so that, we're being better to ourselves. And I think one way to do this is to become a vegetalist. So, think about different types of food. Okay, we have canned, frozen, and fresh options for vegetables. Now, I bet you think fresh is best. Well, all of these varieties actually have similar nutrient contents. And sometimes canned and frozen options can also be a less expensive option as well. Now, why would we want to consume all these types of vegetables? Well, increasing any kind of vegetable consumption is good for us. The only thing to be mindful of is frozen and canned options may have a higher energy density. They may have preservatives like salt or sugar, or sauces which increase the energy density found in these foods. Why isn't it important to eat vegetables? You may be asking yourself, in today's age, it seems like vegetables are less important than ever. Consider all the fast food restaurants in every corner, junk food commercials, and vegetable prices going up. And when I go out into the community to do diabetes education, I often speak to individuals who will tell me over and over again, I'm in a meat and potato mindset. I only eat meat and potatoes. I don't like vegetables. Those are for rabbits. I don't know what they are. I don't know what to do with them. And on and on and on and on, every excuse down the line. Now, I want you to think about all of the different things that you've done for the last 2 years. Did you consume some vegetables? Maybe. Did you play a few rounds of golf, hang out with your friends and family, or go and see a movie or two? I bet you did. Now, consider that inadequately consuming vegetables leads to 2 fewer years of life expectancy. That's 2 fewer years of doing all the things that you love with your friends and your family, just washed away. Now that doesn't seem very good to me. And why does this happen? Well, consider that inadequate vegetable consumption is also linked to a number of chronic diseases, like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and cancers. And these chronic diseases are impacted by inadequate vegetable consumption. And one of the 3 primary controllable risk factors for these diseases is excess weight and obesity. And across Canada, about 60% of adults fall into this category, overweight or obese. And 67% of the healthcare spending within our country goes to support chronic diseases. That's a pretty high number. So it might come as a surprise to you that out of these G7 countries listed here, Canada is the only one without a national fruit and vegetable food policy. For example, food stamps with certain fruit and vegetable allotments. It's pretty astounding. So, what can we do about this? How can we become a vegetablist society? How can we think about continually accessing and consuming vegetables? Well, the first step is with ourselves, starting to substitute vegetables for those other food groups, moving away from that meat and potato mindset. So, the World Health Organization did a study to find out, the adequate amount of vegetables that are around the world and really promoted by each country. They found that at a minimum, we should be consuming 5 servings of vegetables a day, or 400 grams. And in Canada, we use something called the Canada's Food Guide. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. Well, the Canada's Food Guide also talks about servings for individuals of different gender and age. But both of these methods are really hard to visualize. It's hard to tell what one serving of one thing might be compared to another. For example, a serving of carrots is smaller than a serving of lettuce. It's hard to keep track of how many servings we've consumed per day. So as a vegetalist, what I recommend is using the plate method. So the plate method is widely recommended by healthcare professionals, nonprofit organizations, and all kinds of other individuals. The plate method is something that is based upon the Canada's Food Guide and guidelines set out by Health Canada. The plate method allows us to visualize what we're going to be consuming. So I have a plate here with me today. Now this is a 9-inch plate. This is smaller than most standard dinner plates, and this is the one I want you to eat from. So from this plate, we're going to consume half a plate of vegetables, and that's 2 different kinds. We're going to have a quarter of our plate grain or starch, and this is where those starchy vegetables come in. This is where we can eat those corn, sweet potatoes, as well as bread, rices, and other grain products. We're also going to have a quarter of our plate as a meat alternative, things like fish, lentils, and various meats. And with these meals, we're also going to have a glass of milk and a piece of fruit. Now, this is a much easier way to visualize every time we go to sit down for our lunch or dinner. We can think about this very easily when we get there. We can also use this method to plan our meals. So considering that the vegetable portion is the largest portion, that's how we should be planning our meals. We should say, what's going with these carrots, instead of, what am I going to have with this chicken? Right? Planning around our vegetables and being a vegetalist. And once we have this down, we can move on to all other kinds of vegetalist ideas. We can, incorporate different kinds of foods into our meals. So we could maybe make cauliflower pizza crusts or zucchini muffins. We can include, vegetables in our stews, soups, and other things that we're making at home, and maybe even make a garden. We can think about vegetables as well when we're out and about. So a vegetalist would go into the grocery store. They'd walk through the produce section like the rest of us, and they'd take a look around. And if you're like me, you'll pick something up. You'll say, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what it's called because it's an unfamiliar vegetable. But they'll buy it anyways. So maybe they're looking at something like these here, something that's new and unique to them, like bok choy or fiddleheads. Or they might have a new perspective on something they're familiar with, like pumpkin or dandelions. Did you know you can eat those? They would take these items, they would purchase them, go home and Google what they can do with them. They'd ask a friend how to incorporate them into their lives. Now, while they're at their grocery store, they'd also be thinking about the prices of vegetables, right? We all do that. Well, here's a chart outlining some prices of vegetables. It shows that the prices of vegetables really vary depending on the type of vegetable and the option that you're looking for. So fresh, frozen, and canned, and it's quite variable. So sometimes vegetables are cheaper raw, like carrots, and other times they're cheaper canned, like asparagus. So that individual would become educated about the types of vegetables and where they're cheaper and build this into their life. Now, beyond this, a vegetalist would think about vegetables while they're at a restaurant. So they'd think about that plate method, that half a plate of vegetables. They would have a pizza with double veggies. They'd have a burger with a side salad instead of fries. And they would have tomato-based soups instead of cream. They'd be thinking about getting that half a plate of vegetables even when they're at a restaurant. Because, you know, it's much easier when someone else chops your salad and you don't have to. You can think of all kinds of different ways to cook vegetables at restaurants. You get all these ideas, right? I've never seen, you know, a roasted tomato with cheese and spinach on it. Wow, it's a really good idea. I can do that at home. So it's a really good mechanism to think of what they're doing there. A vegetalist would also go into the community. They would think about vegetables and they would become a leader in their community as a vegetalist. They would go to places like the NorWest Community Food Centre. This is a community food centre, one of 8 in Canada, right here in Winnipeg. And at this food centre, the volunteers there provide education and nutritious meals for other individuals in the community. They educate a wide variety of people, from children to elderly, about vegetables, about all kinds of different foods and what they can do with them. They take vegetables from the growth stage all the way to the preparation and cooking stage and show what can be done there. They're leaders in their community. Now, yourself as a vegetalist, you could do something similar as well. You could be a leader in your workplace, school, or community for vegetables. And you could also become a community advocate, recognizing that not everyone has access to affordable vegetables. Not everyone has access to a grocery store in their area. You would recognize that in our diverse country of Canada, that there are different kinds of affordability in rural, northern, and urban locations. You might be on a food policy council. You might advocate to your government to educate them about the effects of eating vegetables. And so what I'm asking you to do today is go home. Take out your mom's white china dinner plate and grab a permanent marker. Draw a line right down the middle. And when she asks what you've done, tell her the overall costs are worth more. And by the way, you always told me to eat my vegetables. I finally decided to listen. Thank you.